I gotta be honest with you guys, this is a near perfect 2 hour block of wrestling television. Top to bottom, great goddamn action. There were a couple things that weren't all that good, but a molten hot crowd in an old Mid-South wrestling stronghold with an old Mid-South wrestling announcer, Jim Ross, to just bring it all back, to have that great throwback feel. And they had to finish strong. Then they brought out Giant Silva's son, and that did not finish the show strong. It might not actually be Giant Silva's son, but he looks so much like him, I'm just gonna roll with it. All they'll remember is the finish. Whew, boy, that was certainly something, wasn't it? I'm John Retton with my review of AEW Dynamite from New Orleans, Louisiana, the UNO Lakefront Arena, and honestly, I'm going to have a lot of praise for this episode. There were even things that I normally wouldn't like that I really did because the crowd was just so goddamn electric. Dun, 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 dun. But boy, that ending, that was hot fucking garbage. That was really goddamn bad. And the crowd hated it. And I'm like, ooh, we're seeing our favorite getting, beat up. They're like, what the fuck is this? Why are you showing us this? God damn it. But anyway, the crowd was really, really up. I do like just, the old feel of like, a Mid-South wrestling show at times. I mean, obviously, this is not going to be like Mid-South wrestling. We can't go back to those days. You can apply some stuff from those days. And at times, they did, because there was some really good pro wrestling on this show. When AEW gets their shit right, they are really goddamn good. They are really, really fucking incredible. They're as close to an American style of New Japan that's not New Japan strong. But anyway, CM Punk, CM Punk, CM Punk. I don't know why Penta is still Penta Scuro or whatever the hell it is. I don't know why Alex is dressed like the Crypt Keeper or something from a Dario Argento movie. If anybody knows the name Dario Argento, I love you. Why does Penta have a shovel? Well, you know what? Enough of that. They do plug that Rampage is going to be on a special time, 3 hours earlier, 4 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Adjust your cocks accordingly. I will be watching that. And then watching SmackDown, cutting both reviews right after. I think they should honestly put Rampage on at that time. Even if the ratings aren't a ton better, the 7 p.m. time for, for this side and, 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, it's too late for a show that unless it's live just feels like it's phoned in. And it is going to be a live edition of Rampage. Punk versus Penta. The crowd was into it. The pace was nice. Punk kept Penta, and Penta's very good. But when he just does a whole bunch of lucha stuff and there isn't a ton of psychology to it, it gets a little messy and all blends together. Now, there was some goofy stuff here, obviously, but Penta is good with the right person. And since Phoenix is going to be out for a while, well, it's about time that, they give Penta a little bit of a singles run. Even in defeat, he's going to look good here. The knee got targeted by Penta. At one point, Punk tried a Rana off the top and just slipped and fell. That looked brutal. I hope he's all right, because that looked bad. The crowd was like, ooh. He did get a Rana off the top a little bit later, into the vise and then to the ropes. Apron teases, big move teases, near falls, and then he catches him for the GTS. 1, 2, 3. Good stuff. Very good opener. And there we go. We're going to go right to our next match, they say. So I'm going to say Punk versus Penta. Very good opener. Not as good as Punk versus Dax Harwood, but still quite good. We're going to go right to our next match. And then they cut to Jericho, Hager, and Garcia arriving on a private jet. And Eddie, Santana, Ortiz interrupt, and they say, on site. And then apparently the former 2.0, wherever their names are, I don't care. They were beat up and tossed out of the car. Where are your shoes? Jericho's yelling. Okay, so we go from a pretty damn good opener to a bunch of comedy, but then again, that's all Jericho can do is bad comedy. But we do get Tarzan Boy, whoa, 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 whoa. And that's all I'm going to do because I'm tired. But this is after Rim Dragon had made their entrance, Red Rim Dragon as it were. And if you rim to the point it's red, that either means they like it or you don't know what the fuck you're doing. Have fun on seeing that. So, it is a tag team title match, Red Rim Dragon versus Jurassic Express. I understand the Fish really remembers Luchasaurus' relatives. Yes, when he was in school, they didn't have history. His social security number is 1. Large Lizard Man in the Mask is what JR keeps calling him. Large Lizard Man. Don't know why that's funny to me. Jungle Boy has improved quite a bit. Was this the best match? No. Was it pretty good? Yes. And O'Reilly is quite good in the ring. Fish is fine, but he's bland. I did like how JR has reached the point. His contract apparently is up, like at the end of this month. And if that's the case, we might not be hearing JR on AEW television anymore. Get Ian Riccaboni if you're not going to get JR anymore. It's Tope Suicida night, folks, and kids eat free. JR at this point was just absolutely taking the piss out of everything. We do get a bunch of, near falls, and we did get this one point where O'Reilly had Luchasaurus in a, choke forever and a day that's never, till Fish could try and get a near fall on Jungle Boy, and then Luchasaurus could wait for a spot and do a lot. That was pretty goddamn cheesy and very staged, but whatever, it is what it is. Jurassic Express on Fish 1, 2, 3. That's revenge for what Fish did to Luchasaurus' ancestors. And then Red Rim Dragon attack, and then they leave. Okay, and then FTR show up to a pop. Alright, we're going to get FTR versus Jurassic Express, and 3 belts for FTR. Sign me the fuck up. Shivani is there with the Blackpool Combat Club, not BBC, as much as I want to keep calling them that. Mox says, I don't know the Gun Club, but I don't like the Gun Club. And Mox says we need less goofs in AEW. Now, Mox is very good, and when he's with the right people, can actually put on a damn good match. His promos are ridiculous. Absolutely comical. Wheeler does say it is time to fight. Okay, Wheeler's a little more motivated. That's fine. I like what Wheeler and Moxley did. So, Jamie Hayter and Tony go face to face, and oh, my heart, be still my beating heart. Wait, that's not my heart beating. Moving on from that, the match is signed. Nobody is going to be fine watching that. I mean, I will be. I will be perfectly innocent during that. If you believe me, you have not been paying attention. So, MJF with Spears took on Captain Shawn Dean, who was in full military garb, and there's Wardlow chants, but Wardlow's not allowed to be there. There's posters all over. MJF gets his zipper stuck because he's all scared of what Wardlow's doing, but it was a ruse, and he starts beating up Shawn Dean. And then we cut back to security being laid out again. And then Wardlow, suddenly the security guard, this big old security guard that couldn't possibly be Wardlow in a mask, just shows up and he does this. He takes off, the crowd loses one guy just off to the, I think the right, off to the left on camera, but he's just losing it. And Wardlow scares him. MJF gets out on the stage and he's all scared. And the referee could have easily counted to 10 before any of this stuff happened, but, let's just ignore that for the purpose of this story. Wardlow's laying out security, powerbombs one on the apron, and then there's this wall of security getting him and everything, and he's yelling at him. MJF's scared, he's trying to get in the ring, and he gets on the mic and says, Bryce, I will pay you three times your rate if you don't count to 10. He says, no, 10. So Shawn Dean has 2 victories over MJF. And by disqualification a couple months ago, during the feud with CM Punk, and now has a count-out victory. And you know what? This is a way to get, because MJF can afford this, these kind of losses because it makes sense for the story. This stuff makes sense. If only AEW did more stuff that made sense and didn't focus so much on the Bucks doing their bullshit, even though they had a much better match against FTR last week. They focus less on the elite comedy and less on the bullshit, and they actually could have a pretty damn good wrestling program. It ain't going to rival WWE as far as ratings, but WWE isn't even rivaling WWE in ratings. As long as they can get good enough TV deals, keep going, that's what matters. So, MJF gets in Bryce's face, shoves him a bit. Spears has to be the voice of reason. How far have we fallen into a pit when Spears is the voice of reason? We're allowed to have a voice on television. Wardlow says he grabs the camera because he's laid out more security backstage. Max, I'm not going to stop until I get my hands on you and you release me from my contract. And MJF's face just sold the whole goddamn thing. Do this right. Do it at the pay-per-view. Have Wardlow win. And then you could have MJF still make Wardlow's life a living hell, but then Wardlow could be out on his own. Darby's in Seattle. You can tell it's Seattle because it's a really depressing shot of the city. It's Darby Fellini Films. Anybody who gets the Fellini reference, I love you. So, coffin match with Andrade next week. That's okay because Andrade's AEW career has been in the coffin since he debuted. That's what happens when you give Vicky Charisma Vacuum Guerrero, when you give her the chance to be your manager. House of Black in someone's backyard somewhere. It actually kind of looked like the entrance of some Dark Souls village or whatever. I guess Del Sol will be purged and something about having a throat full of razors. Every time Malachi Black does this stuff, I like him less and less, and that's a shame because the House of Black has a cool look and everything. And now they're doing dueling House of Black stuff or whatever. They're doing House of Black on AEW and House of Edgy Black on WWE television. And they're both overproduced to the point it's ridiculous. Alright, let's hear it for the Judas. Huge pop for Eddie in a JYD tank top. And Eddie Santana Ortiz took on the Huge Jazz Society. I'm working on a nickname here. I don't really care. Jericho is fucking washed. He lost some weight. Good for him. He's washed. He can't go anymore. Hager is just bland as white bread. The match wasn't bad. It was your typical stuff, though. I mean, everybody just did everything that they did. This is probably this wasn't the low point because the crowd was at least into it. But eventually later, a bat to the back on ref distraction. Garcia covers Eddie 1, 2, 3. Another beatdown. Forever. I don't care about this. Who are going to be the other two people to come in and team up with Eddie Santana Ortiz? Hernandez and Homicide? Oh God, they might actually do that. They might actually do that. They might actually pull that off. Both versions of LAX will be there. But hey, it is what it is. I think it's going to lead to a blood and guts at some point, probably maybe at the pay-per-view, which I don't think would be the worst thing in the world. They need to wind down Jericho being in the ring. They need to wind down Jericho in general in the company. Jericho needs to wind down being in wrestling because he's not any good anymore. But Marvez is with MJF, Spears, and Sterling. MJF is fired up and basically hands Jose some money and says, I've got an idea, Wardlow. I'm going to put you to work. You're going to face a Butcher. Then the Butcher does this for no reason. Okay, Butcher versus Wardlow might not be all that bad. I swear we saw that match before. Maybe I'm thinking the Blade. I don't remember. Some of these matches blend together. And I don't even watch as much Dark and Dark Elevation. If you've noticed, by the way, quick sidebar, that I have not reviewed Dark and Dark Elevation for a while. Here's why. It got to the point where, A, I wasn't enjoying the shows all that much, even though sometimes when they're short enough you can get through them. And B, the level of interest in Dark and Dark Elevation has dropped significantly despite the talent that they have. So I just figured I'd cut and run. And I've been enjoying it. I've been reviewing more movies and splitting between wrestling and movies and also sleeping. So I'm sorry if you were looking for Dark Elevation and Dark reviews. Maria Shafir makes her entrance, and she takes on Sky Blue. Scintillating camera work during some of this. Jade and Sterling watch backstage. The baddie section was there. I assume that the streets outside the venue were a little bit emptier. Red Velvet and Kira Hogan were either part of the section or were just there to feud with somebody. I don't know. I don't care. And I don't mind Red Velvet and Kira Hogan. She's fine for who she is, but Jade has the look of a star. Jade does not have the wrestling ability of a star. And I'm going to keep saying, at least she didn't say cut the shit, because they would have had to have cut this entire thing out. The crowd hated this, and Marina Shafir won. And Marina's style, she's not any worse than she was when she was one of Shayna Baszler's goons, but she's not any better. Sky Blue at least has some energy, but whatever. I didn't care. Lexi Nair is trying to interview Hook, but he's interrupted by Sterling and Nice. They're going to have a match on Dynamite because it's Hook's debut on Dynamite. And then he throws a ball at Danhausen. Why? Are they going to have Danhausen versus Hook on the pre-show of the pay-per-view? In fact, they probably will have that. And he'll beat up Danhausen within like 2 minutes. So, anyway, Sky and Lambert, the sheepish lion Dan Lambert, and Ethan in a shirt so loud that somebody from another galaxy heard it. They knock Sammy and Ty, and it's going to be Sky versus Sammy at Battle of the Belt. Starks gets a huge hometown pop. And Lee and Swerve get good pops as well. Lee and Swerve versus Hobbs and Stark. Oh, bask in his glory. Starks was I'm not going to go over every move in this match, but I would just say check it out. This is one of the matches you should absolutely check out. There was a moonsault off of Lee at one point because Swerve is just that good and Lee is just that massive. Battle of the Belts, by the way, will be on Saturday at 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Adjust your cocks again accordingly. Lee used some good power. Spear by Starks to a big pop. That was some good stuff. And the Destroyer for 2. We got a pounce launch. And then Taz shows up. And Taz eventually ends up pulling Lee's boot. And we get a spinebuster. 1, 2, 3. So, okay, Lee has an out. I'm a bit shocked that they had Lee take the pin. Not sure why. And they wrote themselves into a corner here. Because somebody had to lose and you don't want to do a DQ. The AEW doesn't, and I'll give AEW that much credit. They don't do DQs and countouts that often, so it means something. But Lee taking the pin was a bit odd. I just think if Swerve had taken it, I don't think it would have been the worst thing in the world because, yeah, Swerve's not that much newer to AEW than Lee was, or than Lee is. But anyway, Rampage, live at 4 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Cole versus Page, Texas Death Match. The Blackpool Combat Club versus the Gun Club. Billy Gunn wrestling against Bryan Danielson in 2022. Man, life is wild. Ruby Riott versus Robin Renegade in an Owen Hart qualifier. Battle of the Belts 2. Sammy versus Sky for the TNT Championship. Gresham versus Dalton Castle for the Ring of Honor Championship. Rosa versus Rose for the Women's Championship. Cut to Thunder Rosa in all leather. Good God. Oh. Anyway, sorry. It's hard not to be captivated by Thunder Rosa because seriously, one, she's a great wrestler. And yes, okay, she's hot as hell. She is. Just saying. Of course, Rose and Vicky show up with a cake, and Rosa ends up shoving the cake in Rose's face. And Rose accidentally blasts Vicky because she's got cake in her face. But I mean, to be fair, Vicky deserves to be blasted repeatedly until she's off camera because she's not any good. And then Rosa and Nyla brawl a bit. That's getting very hard to say. And Nyla does say, "I love cake and violence," or "I like cake and violence." Okay, that was good. But Thunder Rosa versus Nyla Rose, this ought to be pretty good. Keep the interference basically non-existent. I think it'll be great. Dynamite Hook's debut. Hook! Sorry. Okay. Trying to remember to only do that sparingly. Wardlow versus Butcher. Britt versus Daniel Camella. In a Owen Hart qualifier. The former Vanessa Bourne from WWE, who appeared on one or two episodes of Dark. Good for her. I really like watching her in the ring. So, Jungle Boy versus O'Reilly in a men's Owen Hart qualifier match. Andrade versus Darby in a coffin match. A huge announcement next week. Is the huge announcement going to be that Tony's going into rehab? Because he kind of needs to. He's on something. He's on some form of the Herb Abrams diet, just saying. Video package on Cole and Page. Samoa Joe entrance. Lethal and Dutt are in the front row. Suzuki and Kazanina. Suzuki versus Joe, Ring of Honor television title match. I'm not going to go over every move in this match because they chopped, they striked, they did some submission moves, and Joe won with the Muscle Buster. Also, I think this is Suzuki's last year in wrestling. I'd be very shocked if it wasn't. 12-day TV title run is over. This did mean more for Suzuki to win it from Red Titus. No disrespect to Red Titus. Suzuki versus Joe, as far as to a hardcore fan, is more of a dream match. And then, Joe is the Ring of Honor TV champion. Lethal and Dutch show up. They have a president. The bird. Bird is the word. And then suddenly the lights out. JR takes the piss out of it because the lights out stuff is ridiculous. And then some huge guy named Satnam Singh, I'm not actually sure how to pronounce it. According to a friend of mine, he was part of the G League or whatever it is. Not G League. Thankfully, he wasn't part of that. But the G League for the NBA is the first India NBA player. I'd never heard of him. I instantly thought that Giant Silva's son had made an appearance in wrestling. Look at Giant Silva and look at this guy. There's an accurate comparison there. I didn't agree with the Khali comparisons until he did the Khali. The crowd booed the shit out of this. Look, the guy's big. It's like, oh, look at him. And this wasn't a great debut because he was basically in a giant, he was in giant dress clothes trying to do stuff. I'm sure he's a nice guy, but good God, this was ridiculous. This was fucking stupid. Yeah, let's just take Joe. Joe won, Joe Suzuki, and then we just took the air out of it by having a huge guy that has no idea what he's doing. It's like watching Giant Gonzalez just without the body suit with fur on it. Not a good first impression at all. Although, remember, is the finish. But let me know your thoughts in the comments. Like, share, subscribe, Twitter handle in the description. I'm John Wetland. I'll see you soon.